JCN has a corporate twin, the Judicial Education Project, each group backing up the actions and finances of the other. Let me walk you through this setup because it is a capsule summary of how political scheming is accomplished in our corrupted dark money era. First, you pair a 501c3 and a 501c4. The Judicial Crisis Network was chartered as a 501c4 social welfare group. The Judicial Education Project as its allied 501c3 nonprofit organization. Under a perverse reading of the law, the 501c4 organization is allowed to operate as a dark money political attack group. We see this arrangement commonly now in the clandestine world of dark money politics. In fact, the recent Supreme Court case about dark money was brought by a group called Americans for Prosperity Foundation, which was the 501c3 associated with Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch brothers' 501c4 that spent millions of dollars to help Amy Coney Barrett get her seat, and yet she didn't recuse herself from the case involving the 501c3. So second, you operate the two as one unit. Judicial Crisis Network, Judicial Education Project are connected by staff, by dollars, and by location. According to the most recent tax records, long-serving JCN staffer Carrie Severino is also the sole and principal officer of, you guessed it, the Judicial Education Project. Severino is not listed on JCN's tax forms, but she serves as its public-facing, quote, chief counsel and policy director. JCN and JEP tax records both list the same address in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, is right down the hall from the Federalist Society at the same address. And both groups share day-to-day staff. There is a doctrine in the law called piercing the corporate veil. In this case, the corporate veil between these two is a web of holes. What's the next thing you do? You soak up dark money together. It's hard to know much about these two groups' dark money funding. That's why they keep it dark. But we know the Wellspring Committee has funded both groups. Both have also paid money to something called BH Group, which is a mysterious LLC that Leonard Leo once disclosed as his employer, and that made a $1 million mystery donation to Trump's inaugural. It seems to do no other business. They use the 501c3 and the 501c4 status precisely because it lets them hide their donors and controllers. And the last thing is that you get to play shell games with your name. A couple of years ago, those two organizations formally changed their legal names in Virginia. Now follow this for a minute. Judicial Crisis Network changed its name, and it became the Concord Fund. Judicial Education Project changed its name, and it became the 85 Fund. The Concord Fund then registered its old name, Judicial Crisis Network, as what's called a fictitious name, a kind of corporate alias under Virginia law, and continued to operate as the Judicial Crisis Network. Here's the Virginia law that allows them to do that. A fictitious name is a name that a person, individual, or business entity uses instead of the person's true name, usually in the course of transacting or offering to transact business. It also registered the name Honest Elections Project Action as an additional fictitious name to carry out a new voter suppression project. The 85 Fund likewise registered its old name, the Judicial Education Project, as a fictitious name, and it separately registered as the Honest Elections Project as an additional fictitious name. And it gets even better than this, because, as I've said before, when the Washington Post exposed the $250 million scheme that Leonard Leo was at the center of to pack and control the Supreme Court, to capture it like a captured agency, he wasn't much use any longer. He was like a blown agent in a covert operation. He had to go someplace. Where did he hop to? He hopped from the Federalist Society to the Honest Elections Project, so he could get to work on the presiding officer's favorite cause, voter suppression. Same guy, same corporate network, new name and new purpose, voter suppression. As if this weren't enough, both of these groups have now filed new fictitious names. So this is to help them wade into the right-wing fuss over what the right wing likes to call critical race theory. So the Concord Fund has now added the fictitious name Free to Learn Action, and the 85 Fund has now added the fictitious name Free to Learn. Again, you see the pairing of the 501c3 and the 501c4 as part of the basic structure for dark money political influence operations. And by the way, the same person filled out all these forms for both organizations and is listed with various titles on each. So now we have one group that calls itself the Concord Fund that operates simultaneously as the Judicial Crisis Network, the Honest Elections Project Action, the Free to Learn Action, and we have its sister organization, the 85 Fund, that operates simultaneously as the Judicial Education Project, the Honest Elections Project, and Free to Learn, all with overlapping staff, locations, and funding. And by the way, when you are the funder of these groups, you are their controller. Now, imagine this level of complexity multiplied many times over, because that is what the Washington Post disclosed. And I borrow a photograph from their video of their investigation. That Washington Post expose on the covert court capture operation exposed the Judicial Crisis Network as one part, just one part of a massive, there it is, Judicial Crisis Network, one part of a massive web of groups, a web of groups that took in over $250 million in dark money between 2014 and 2017. This effort to capture the Supreme Court, they're not kidding around. Spending $250 million in dark money is a serious investment that demands a serious return. And guess what? Expert testimony before my Senate Court subcommittee has since raised that number to $400 million through 2018. Through all these allied and coordinated front groups, the keys on the dark money piano that the big donors can play in chords and singly as they wish, dark money donors can, from hiding covertly, channel tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in anonymized money toward the scheme's court capture goals. Colleagues, this is a scheme akin in complexity and tradecraft to an intelligence agency covert operation. Only this one is not being run by one country against another. This one is being run in and against our own country by a handful of creepy billionaires and their foundations trying to impose their self-serving ideology on the rest of us through our least democratic branch, the branch that doesn't care if normal people hate this stuff because they're in robes for life. That's our federal courts, and particularly, it's our Supreme Court. And the big dark money donors have pretty well pulled it off, too, following Lewis Powell's old admonition to use strength in organization and united action of all of this complexity. They've just made it all clandestine, which is why I'm going to keep digging. To be continued. I yield the floor.